People tend to be extremely opinionated and full of different ideas and general view of things, which is why, depending on your values, the same object or scenario can be totally seen differently by two people. Thus the quote, "one man's trash is another man's treasure." For example, in a scenario where you see your friends or family or even randoms doing their work and hating it, then sees even more people generally hating their jobs, you think, gee, everyone is hating their work. I guess I should suck it up and do some shitty job which I'll hate and make me want to kill myself. Or you could think, gee, everyone's hating their work. There's probably something wrong with the education and occupation system, which probably links to the fact that loans are mandatory for an economically successful economy, thus requiring people to suffer through bank loans and is forced to do shitty manual labor just to get by. We should probably change that. And then you go out with your small protest buddies in the streets or on social media only to be denied by your government or a former world leader because they're too busy kicking refugees out of their countries, or racing the US to the nearest oil vendor. As cliche as it is now, I've always liked the Japanese way of storytelling in games, because there's always a sort of, hey, this status quo is wrong, we should probably change it motive going on in most of those games, which is why I like Dark Souls 2's overall story the most, because it's a game where you can literally shove your finger up everyone's expectations so you can actually do the thing you want to do. Suck it, Emerald Herald, for trying to make me follow this cycle fad. I'll be hanging out with my burning Tangela buddy over here to talk about why the hell there isn't a Pokemon Z. I didn't get that motive as much in Dark Souls 1, although you're still given a choice, but this motive still kinda returns in Bloodborne. So what about Dark Souls 3? Let's just say like any Soulsborne, it remains vague as hell. But the cool opening cinematic returns, just like in Dark Souls 1. You have an extremely vague story and world, but at least the opening kinda introduces you to what kind of things will be kicking your ass over and over, as you try to keep any sanity you have left trying to beat the 5th game in this From Software fun train ride of sadism. As much as I like Dark Souls 2, the opening just doesn't have that quality of nerdgasm that this game gives you. No, really, I was literally going, yo! 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 Basically, the premise is that you are now an unkindled, which is probably an even shittier version of an undead, and now you have to take things down that are badass enough to link the fire, aka beat a Souls game. The views and sceneries of this game managed to even be better than its previous predecessors, which is ironic considering that they wanted this world to be even more apocalyptic with even less humans running around. Are they trying to say that this planet will be better without any intelligent life? Well, I would be tempted to think so if the Dark Souls world didn't have poison swamps and boiling lava lakes with giant automatic firing crossbows for some reason. Looking at this game from a lore perspective, I'm not sure how to feel about it. People criticize Dark Souls 2's lore for relying too much on Dark Souls 1's story, but then wouldn't this game be an even worse offender of that, considering that it literally puts in some areas, scenarios, and characters straight out from Dark Souls 1? And they're not even trying to be vague about it, unlike Dark Souls 2. Even the names are the same. I mean, I guess it's not a bad thing. Dark Souls 2 drops hints here and there and you get that little nostalgia boner from the first game, but at the same time the world and lore still felt refreshing that you can't really complain. And the way Dark Souls 3 did it, well, it's okay. Nothing that will totally ruin the game or anything, but it still felt kinda cheap at times. I swear to Velka, even Andre's animation looks completely the same. Oh, speaking of Velka, she's in the game now too. Now I thought converting back from a Bloodborne's gameplay back to a Souls game gameplay would be simple, but then I was made to remember that anything other than the first goons you face can power through your attacks and smack you back to casual land unless you're wielding a weapon that's the same size as the Buster Sword. In Bloodborne, with enough stamina, you could spam R1 with most enemies until they die. It goes something like attack, 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 profit. So when I forgot that I was playing a Souls game and tried that, it went something like attack, attack, oh shit. Yeah, converting to Bloodborne was way easier. There are some little changes from previous Souls games as well. Adaptability is no longer a thing, praise the sun. But now you also have a luck stat. I was kinda disappointed when I found out that the luck stat primarily increases the drop rate. I was expecting that if your luck was high enough, bosses and enemies would trip here and there like in Smash Brawl, and maybe even kill themselves or something. A great addition to this game is the ability to choose whether you wanted a homeward bone to the last bonfire you rested at or straight back to the Firelink Shrine. This is something you wouldn't expect them to implement, but it's so great and time-saving I would even consider this one feature to be even more groundbreaking than Final Fantasy XV. Also, I don't know how, but this game manages to be even scarier than Bloodborne. Some parts of the game literally had me more scared than any recent horror games. That said, there are some negatives when it comes to gameplay as well. This is a Souls game, so we are expected to be somewhat more defensive, yet at the same time, the enemies and some bosses attack like Bloodborne enemies, and as a Souls character you are just way too slow to keep up. You'd be attacked with combos longer than even some fighting games, and enemies will be using sick-ass dodge maneuvers you'd be convinced they watch some animes or something. I think that's probably why I find the dungeons themselves to be more brutal than the bosses. Most of the bosses still remain docile. Well, I mean, as docile as a Souls boss can be, and even straight out let you hit them for free at times. It might be because of my build, but there are a lot of bosses that I was able to defeat on my first try, while the area I had to go through to get to it killed me more times than Sans from Undertale. Holy shit, that fight. I guess it just didn't seem right, considering that these games were very boss-orientated, yet they feel kinda cheapened out in this game. Although again, it might just be me. Guess we'll just have to wait for the DLC for more beautiful sceneries and brutality. Another thing about the game that confounded me was the frame rate. Sure, I played this on the PS4, so I expected 30 frames per second, yet at the same time, some areas felt like they were giving the game itself panic attacks, and the frame rate just spikes to hell. I mean, normally this wouldn't be a problem gameplay-wise, but when you're trying to dodge attacks perfectly on an enemy that could literally two-shot you, well, I had a bad time. Seriously, why are the normal enemies so fucking strong? All in all, the game is still great, and while I felt the endings wasn't as satisfying as Scholar of the First Sin, it's still very acceptable for the finale. Now if they're not going for Dark Souls 4, would I want a Bloodborne 2? Probably not, since they pretty much transferred their good ideas and motives to Dark Souls 3. Not that it's a bad thing at all, it just made me want to throw my money harder at the game. Perhaps a futuristic Souls game would be nice, but instead of corrupted kingdoms, you have corrupted information controllers, and instead of a curse, you replace it with nanomachines, and instead of giant monsters, you have giant monster-like machines. What? What's that? Metal Gear? Oh.